Welcome, everybody. I know that we are having some difficulties with Schoology, and it doesn't seem as if I'm going to be able to run a conference with you today. And so I just want to make sure that you guys don't miss out on some of the things that we talked about with the third period class. Today, I just went over the exam, so you can take a look and see that when you open up part 1, there'll be 3 sections of grammar. The agreement chapter we did before we started remote learning. We did subject, verb, and pronoun antecedent. There was a quiz on that you might want to look at. Pronoun usage, we did that once you returned. Actually, once we were on remote learning. And we just did troublesome verbs this week on Monday. Lie and lay, rise and raise, sit and set. The vocab, notice we didn't take anything from The Great Gatsby, so you don't have to worry about those terms. Just concentrate on the terms from Transcendentalism and the Civil War. And that will get you to question 40. So you're up to 21 here and 40. The bulk of the test is going to be on Transcendentalism. On literature. And the first section is Transcendentalism. Remember, Emerson is the father. Thoreau is kind of the student. Emerson gets us going off with solitude. He talks about the stars. He says how they are always present but inaccessible, and they awaken a kind of reverence in us. He mentions the difference between looking at nature as an adult versus a child. The adult is like the woodcutter who sees only the stick of timber. The child is like the poet who can see the entire landscape. He tells us the sun illuminates the eye of man, but it shines on the eye and the heart of a child. He mentions to us that sometimes crossing a bare common at twilight amid snow puddles, he is glad to the brink of fear. He has that wild comment that he becomes a transparent eyeball. He is nothing. He ceases to exist. Instead, he becomes part and parcel of God. He concludes his essay, Nature, with the idea that nature always wears the colors of the spirit. When you're sad, she looks sad. When you're happy, she looks happy. Self-reliance is an essay all about being a nonconformist. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist, he says, right? He gives us this idea that envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. He talks about true genius, to believe that what is true for you is true for all. And he mentions 3 geniuses, an M, an M, and a P, Moses, Milton, and Plato, because they believed that what they thought was more important than books and tradition. In Self-Reliance, he talks about that little gleam of light that is within all of us. We need to listen to that little gleam of light and follow that direction. That's pretty much Self-Reliance. When we move over to Thoreau, we know that he went to Walden for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. He went to the woods because he wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts in life, and not when he came to die discover he had not lived. He repeats the word simplicity, simplicity, simplicity 3 times. He says our lives are frittered away by detail. We need to get it simple. There's no need to pay so much attention to the news or the mail. Wise words right now. He says if you've read one news story, you've read them all. We should try to keep our affairs on a thumbnail, he says. He talks about life is but a stream he goes a-fishing in. And he says that sometimes the head is a cleaver. It cuts to the meanings of things. He mentions as well the idea that perhaps if a man doesn't keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears the beat of a different drummer. But eventually he leaves Walden. He says it had become too routine. How worn and dusty then are the highways of tradition. It didn't take him more than a week before there was a path worn from his cabin all the way to the pond. And then he said he had more lives to live. He did not wish to take a cabin passage. He wanted to stand before the mast and see the moonlight on the water. And so Walden finishes up with a belief in success. If a man advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. So live your dreams. If you have built castles in the air, he says, your work need not be lost. Now put the foundations under them. He also wrote civil disobedience, which is to go against something without using violence. Civil disobedience was based on the night that he spent in jail for refusing to pay his poll tax. He did not want to support the Mexican-American War because he felt that that would only further slavery. So the only action he could take was the action of not paying his taxes. During the evening of his experience, he reflects back and writes how that government is best which governs least. A true paradox or contradiction. How could it be best when it does the least? He says that this group of people rule not because they're right, but because they are the strongest. And that's when he means the majority. Following the majority is not always the best thing in the world. He says, I think we should be men first and subjects afterwards. Sometimes there are laws that we need to break, he says, if they go against our morality. He would like to see a government based upon the individual, like Confucius has said, but he has not come across that as yet. Those are your two transcendentalists that come from the Romantic period. During the Civil War, we read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. Remember, he didn't even really know his mother's identity. Barely. He was in contact with her. They were separated shortly after his birth. He mentions, too, he didn't know his birthday. He was raised in the Auld family. Mrs. Auld was very tender-hearted and kind until her husband told her that she had to treat Frederick like chattel, like livestock or furniture. And things then began to change. She wouldn't encourage him to read any longer. She would hit him whenever she saw him with a newspaper. But he didn't give up. If he couldn't learn from her, he turned to his white playmates, and they would barter, sometimes with a piece of bread, in order to learn how to read. The more knowledge he was able to acquire, the more upset he became, though, because he realized all the things that were left out for him. He read the book The Columbian Orator about a slave who gained his freedom, and he started to think along those lines of escaping. But he lives by the motto of trust no one, because even though the two Irishmen on the dock talk to him about leaving, he's not sure if they're just setting him up. When he eventually does leave Maryland and gets to New York, although he wants to be happy, he knows that it's a tough life, that he's not really going to be able to trust anyone. But he is a study in success because he overcomes all of these odds and he becomes a great representative of the United States government. In letters to his family, Robert E. Lee thanks his son for a book about Washington, a book that was written by Edward Everett, the man who became the keynote speaker at Gettysburg a couple of years later. This is written before the war breaks out, but after 4 states have seceded. Lee believes that that secession from the Union is akin to revolution. It's terrible. He believes that the Constitution wasn't made for people to break it at will, and so he finds, to his disappointment, that these states are pulling away, and he disagrees. He's a man conflicted. By the time you get to the end of his letter, he says he will do nothing except raise his sword in self-defense. We all know the Gettysburg Address, delivered on that rainy day in November, many months after the actual battle, which was in July. Abraham Lincoln gives us the 77 years ago opening that links the event of the commemoration of the cemetery to the writing of the Declaration of Independence and the founding of this country. While he does commemorate the cemetery there, the second half of his speech is about fighting, continuing the fight. For these dead shall not have died in vain. It's up to us to keep it going so that this country will have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. And lastly, when it comes to Walt Whitman, the 2 Civil War pieces are obviously "O Captain, My Captain" and "Beat, Beat, Drums." I don't think I put that there, sorry. "O Captain, My Captain," a dedication and elegy to Lincoln himself. Remember the juxtaposition of the celebration and the metaphor of a captain, a ship, and reaching the port, but yet losing its leader. When I Heard the Learned Astronomer is a great example of modern poetry, of transcendentalism, because you have a speaker who would rather go outside and study the stars than spend time with charts and figures and things like that. And I Hear America Singing is a great example of a modern poem, free verse and all that. An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge is the one short story from this period. Remember how Ambrose Bierce manipulates time? And Peyton Farquhar is on the bridge, but he never really leaves it. The journey that he takes is all in his mind. The story takes place in northern Alabama, and Peyton Farquhar is a Southern devoted to the Southern cause, and he's hanged for his attempt to burn down the bridge. The escape involves all those fantastical elements that we look at later and realize it couldn't possibly have happened. The Great Gatsby, we don't have to review because hopefully it's still fresh in your mind, and there's no way you can review for the reading comprehension. Just do your best. So tonight you're going to work on the essay for The Great Gatsby, and then I'll give you the other one tomorrow night. Okay? These are just literary devices you might want to be familiar with too. Okay, so sorry we didn't get to meet through Schoology. Good luck, everyone. I hope you are well, and I missed our conference terribly. Let me start with a blank whiteboard. The first thing that we did during third period is we went over the the matching column for The Great Gatsby from yesterday's practice test. I have to tell you that the computer is a little bit frustrating with regard to Schoology in a lot of different ways, but one of them is that some of you may have found that your scores were very low yesterday, and meanwhile you had answered all the multiple choice, either nearly perfect or completely perfect, and yet your grade was like a 60. That's because when it comes to the matching column, the computer doesn't know how to mark it wrong if only one is wrong. So if you get 1 or 2 wrong, it takes away all 10 points. So that might be why your score is looking so low. I didn't count it as a numerical grade. I simply counted it as an assignment. Therefore, you don't have to worry. As long as you were here, you did it, you submitted it, you're still going to get the full credit, okay? So don't worry about that. But I just wanted to point out in case your score was low, don't feel bad. Today I'm going to go over the outline for the second trimester exam. We're going to talk about a couple of different authors and some of the works of literature, maybe a few quotes here and there if possible. And then, starting this evening, we're going to be breaking down the test into sections. So, for example, tonight, Wednesday night, and you'll see it in your Schoology account, you will see the Gatsby essay. There are 3 possible topics. You do not have to do all 3, okay? You're going to just choose one essay topic, okay? And on the sheet of paper that I'm sending you through Schoology, you'll notice there are 2 boxes. Okay, I'm not asking you to write out the full essay. I'm not asking you for the intro. I'm not asking you for the conclusion. I'm simply asking you to outline the body paragraphs that you would have for your outline, for your essay. And so when I mention outline, I'm looking for 2 specific direct quotes that you would be able to use to develop your argument. Okay, so I want to see a little bit of an outline here on body paragraph number 1 and body paragraph number 2. When you're building your outline, remember within it, you want to definitely incorporate 2 direct quotes because that's where your evidence will be coming from. So Wednesday night, you're going to do the Gatsby essay. Thursday, if all goes well and we can conference, we're going to go over the Gatsby essay. I'll ask how many people did question A. Can we get some ideas as for what your outlines have? Who did question B? Who did question C? So we're going to go over it Thursday, but I have to tell you that the outline itself, the one that you put together, is due at 8:30 in the morning on Thursday. Okay? Since we can't count the trimester exam as such, we will count each assignment that you do as 33 points towards the class participation homework grade. Okay, so Wednesday night, tonight you do the Gatsby essay, you send it to me by 8:30 in the morning Thursday, you've got 33 points. Thursday night, you're going to get the other essay. It could be on Civil War Lit or Transcendentalism. Okay, you work on that Thursday night, you send it in Friday morning by 8:30 a.m., send me your outline, same situation, you get another 33 points. Okay, now I'm sorry I'm all messy here. Let me see if I can erase all this. I wonder if there'd be a quick way to erase it. Maybe this one? Bear with me, folks. For whatever reason, it's not erasing. You know what I'll do? I'll just write it in a different color pen. There's got to be a way to erase this. I thought this was the eraser signal. kind of erasing, but not completely, right? I think there would be this. Whoops, that wasn't so good. All right, I'll just switch to another color. So that'll take us through Friday morning. You submit your second essay outline, and Friday during the day in our conference, we go over it. Then, when it comes to the weekend, there is no homework over the weekend, so don't worry about that. Maybe what I could do is add another classes to the board. Okay, yeah. So Friday we'll review in our conference. We will review the second essay, go around the class, find out ideas, same thing. Nothing over the weekend. Monday when you come in during our conference, I'm going to distribute the first section of part 1. That will take you from question number 1 through 60. You'll work on it during class, and we'll check it out. And then Monday night, I will give you the second half of part 1, and that will be numbers 61 to 120. And that will be submitted by the next morning for another 33 points. So if you do the first essay and outline it, you get 33, the second essay, 33, and the rest of part 1, 33. And that's what I'll use for a participation grade. Okay? Tuesday, we'll go over all of the responses. And maybe, yeah, we'll see. We'll make it work one way or the other. Okay? So with the other